All right. Hey, everyone, and thanks, Maria, for the intro. Okay, so today I want to start by telling you a little story. It all started back in Christmas last year. I was with my family, and when it came to gifts, I was lucky to receive a Philips Hue kit. For those who don't know, Philips Hues are those fancy yet overpriced lights that you can control with an application, just like that. And I thought, it can be controlled through an application, you say. There must be an API for it. It's running through the local network, right? And all of a sudden I thought, what if I make a Nuxt module for it? It could trigger some lights on Nuxt Startup, trigger some other lights when Nuxt is ready, and maybe warn the whole open space with some red lights when there's an error going on. For sure, that was possible. It was also way too fun of a concept, and it would make for a great tweet and video. And sure it did, thank you all. So that was my plan, basically. I had about 3 months to figure out that API and to make a module for it. But there was a catch. What about collaborators that don't have Philips Hue? Well, first of all, I thought, well, for sure, my main collaborator's GitHub CI doesn't have Philips Hue, so how will I manage that? Or maybe it does, I don't know. Like maybe Debbie is not something about it, I'm not sure. And well, there's also my coworkers who might not have Philips Hues, but anyway. Well, while it might sound silly to have them install something that might be of no use to them, more importantly, why would I impact my code base with something that's only fun? Apart from the next level developer experience, of course. But anyway, with all those challenges in mind, that's how I built Nuxt Hue. So Nuxt Hue is a module that has no impact on the code base, that is configured once, and that is installed globally. In short, Nuxt Hue is a Nuxt global module. And if Nuxt Hue is a Nuxt global module, I'm Lucie Haberer. I'm from Paris. I'm currently studying computer science. I should graduate by the end of the year, so fingers crossed for that. And I'm also working at Prismic as a developer experience engineer. I'm having fun there managing the company open source ecosystem and interacting with our lovely developer community. Earlier this year, I became a Pro Nuxt ambassador. I always had fun working with Nuxt, and I'm so happy to keep working with them. And well, this is my first talk ever, so wish me luck. All right. So before diving into global modules, let's first do a quick Nuxt module recap. And no worries, everyone, it will be beginner-friendly, so if you're new to Nuxt or Nuxt modules, you never made one, you should be able to follow along and to grasp the idea with me. Okay, so Nuxt modules. What are Nuxt modules? So according to Nuxt documentations, modules are Nuxt.js extension, which can extend its core functionality and add in-less integration. Pretty powerful, huh? Well, in practice, what does that mean? Well, let's say you want to make your website a PWA. Well, there's a Nuxt module for that. It takes care of all the gotchas and is easy to set up. Again, you want to connect to your favorite headless CMS. There's a module for that. It's even maintained by a wonderful person. And well, okay, I got it. I'm biased for this one. There's a module for VCMS out there, so you can go check out any of them. But you got my point. You want to do something? There's a module for that. You can check out a comprehensive list of all modules known at modules.nuxtjs.org. Okay, before moving on, some other Nuxt modules basics. So Nuxt modules are registered inside Nuxt config, can be either a package name, a relative path to a module that you have locally, or any of those with some additional options provided to the module. Then talking about the module itself, a module is basically just a function. So this function receives as its only argument the module's options for it, and its context, so this argument is referring to the next instance, which allows us to extend Nuxt functionality through this instance. All right, so this is everything we need to know for modules for today. So there's a module for that. Modules are registered inside Nuxt config, and modules are functions. Okay, so we can now talk about Nuxt global modules. So what are Nuxt global modules? So by taking our little feature list from before, we were saying that there's a module for that. Well, unfortunately, that's not true anymore. At least that means there's plenty to be built. Next step was modules are registered inside Nuxt config. Well, that's not true anymore. Global modules are registered and configured globally once. Then we add modules are functions. Well, this one is still true. Global modules are built just like regular modules. So that gives us this little feature list, but let's add one which is really important for global modules, which is global modules have no impact on the code base nor the final website. And I think that is really what makes global module strong for you. Because indeed, when we think about what do global modules enable us to do, because global modules have no impact on the code base nor the final website, this allows global modules to work transparently across all Nuxt projects on your computer. I think a great metaphor for that is to think of global modules a bit like Chrome extension. A Chrome extension personalizes your experience on every website you visit, and therefore, a global module personalizes your experience on every Nuxt project you work on. Okay, got it. So global modules are about personalization. And now that we got that, let's talk about a few modules examples. So first off, we take a fun one, which is Nuxt. I talk about it in the intro, and Nuxt is the global modules that change the lights around you according to your next development server state. And well, for such a module, having to install it for every project felt really off. Therefore, it was a great candidate to be a global module because global modules are only installed once. And also, trust me, I would not have used it so extensively. I wouldn't have used it so extensively if it wasn't a global module, because now I'm just delighted to see it spinning whenever I start a Nuxt server and I'm not even thinking about it. That is just so delightful. But okay, I get it. Fun modules are only as fun as a Chrome extension that turns your cursor into a bongo cat. And well, I had this one for years, but let's talk about productivity modules now. So we could think about global modules that warns you whenever there's an update to your other Nuxt modules, for example. That could be helpful. Or what about the modules that gives you performance statistics about your current Nuxt project? That also could be helpful, but what is common to both those modules that you might also be the only one of your team to care about that kind of information. And therefore, I think those two modules are great candidates to be made global modules. And with global modules, I really think the possibilities are endless, just like with regular modules. Okay, before moving on, let's just take a bad example. So let's think about a hypothetical Google Analytics module. So these modules won't make for great global modules because it needs to impact your site directly. It requires a per project or shared configuration to add your analytics token, for example, or that kind of stuff. And overall, it's just not about personalization. So those are three big red flags that this module won't make for great global modules. Okay, so we talked a bit about global modules, but so far I haven't shown you how to actually make one. So here's my suggestion to you. Let's actually make one together. And now we're off to some live coding. All right, so here's my workspace. So inside it, I have two projects. One is the Nuxt application that I've been working on. A second one is the module package that I'm also been working on. This module is currently registered inside my Nuxt project through the Nuxt config file using a relative path like this. And what this module is doing is that whenever I run my dev server like this, it will look through my Nuxt config for every module I have installed, and will find a link to the documentation and print them to the console, just like this. And all this work is pretty straightforward, but no worries, you will be able to check all the code at the end of my talk. So what this is doing basically is just fetching all modules that we know of, then it's looking for your config for the modules that you have registered, and then it finds links to the documentation and prints a link in a fancy way to the console. Okay, so, well, this is interesting. The module, what it is doing, is also cool, but again, you might be the only one of your team to care about that kind of information because maybe you're new to Nuxt and you want some link to that documentation. So what we'll do now is we turn this module into a global module. And remember, the first thing I said is that global modules have no impact on your code base, and therefore we need to remove that line here to remove our module completely from our code base, and it's not even anymore in our packages on here. So this project is now completely free and doesn't know about our global modules. So we can close this file, and now, as you might expect, if I try to run again my Nuxt server, my modules won't show up anymore. So yeah, well, no links to documentation anymore. So how can we turn this module into a global module now, and how can we bring it back inside our Nuxt config? Well, the answer to that is NuxtRC. So NuxtRC is a file that lives in your home directory. It's used by Nuxt to store your telemetry preferences, so you might already have one. And it uses the same interface as your Nuxt config file. And this is really important because this file is used as a base to resolve every Nuxt config on your computer. What this means is that whenever you start a Nuxt project on your computer, Nuxt will load your NuxtRC and get the configuration from it. And then it will load your Nuxt config and extend the NuxtRC configuration from your Nuxt config and eventually resolve your Nuxt config. The only odd thing about this file is that it uses this RC syntax, which is not JSON or JavaScript, and this is just a standard for RC files that lives in home directory. Okay, so With that knowledge, we can now try to get back our module inside our application. So let's open my own Nuxt RC. As you can see, I have inside it my telemetry preferences. So that's a great thing that it's the Nuxt RC. And what I said that this file uses the same interface as our Nuxt config. So what we can do here, we can just declare a build modules array like this, which is the syntax for us to declare an array. And on the first index, we want to get back our module using the relative path we had before. And now, if I try to launch again my server, you can see that our module is back. Great. Well, not really. As you might have guessed, by using a relative path, this makes this module only working correctly with this very next project I have on my computer. So instead, what we can do is we can try to use an absolute path. And well, as you might have guessed, this is still working. And what is great about absolute path is that this makes this module working on every next project on my computer. So right now, we effectively turned this module into a global module. Great. Well, again, it's not really ideal for a few reasons. Is that because this path is an absolute path, this path might only work on my computer. And therefore, if I want to ship that package and make it available to you, this won't work for you. Definitely, what we need to do here is to figure out this path programmatically. And to do that, we'll build together a simple CLI. So remove the path here, and off to our module for some development. So as I said, we'll build a simple CLI. It won't be anything fancy. It will just be a script that when called, figure out the path programmatically and get it inside Nuxt RC. And when called again, remove it from the Nuxt RC. And well, we'll build this CLI in Node.js, and a CLI in Node.js is basically just a JavaScript file. So we create a CLI.js file inside a bin directory that's just for convention. And inside it, we need to do three things. First thing, we need to compute our module path. To compute our module path, we need one thing. It's a path library from Nuxt. So path library is a built-in library to Node.js. And all right, sorry. Like this. So this is a path library from Node. And then I will just compute my module path using it, which goes like this. And I will use here the special constant called dirname. Dirname is a constant that refers to your current file directory. So here's the bin directory that we created. And now I can just go one step higher to reach my package root, and it goes like this. So this effectively computes our path. And if I log it to the console, and we launch our little CLI, this we can see that it logged to the console our path to our module. Great. All right, so we are off to the second step. Second step is to read our current Nuxt RC file. So to read our current Nuxt RC file, because this file, as I said, using the RC syntax, we cannot just import it like a JSON file. We need something else, and what we need here is a library called RC9. RC9 is a library developed by Nuxt, which is actually used by Nuxt to reserve its own RC file, but overall it's just a library to read and write inside config file. So for convenience, I already had this library installed on my package here, so we can just import the first function for it, which is readuser. The readuser function, as you might have guessed, it reads a user file from the file system, so we'll read the user Nuxt RC file from our file system, like this. And now if I console log current, and I go back to my terminal, and I launch a script, you can see that it printed to the console my telemetry config, which is what I have currently inside my Nuxt RC, like this. Great. So now that we have the content of our Nuxt RC, we just need to figure out if the module is activated or not. And according to that, we need to activate it or deactivate it. So first thing, if the module is activated, we'll deactivate it, and else we'll activate it. Okay, so to know if our module is activated, we need to check for two things. First thing, we want to check for build modules array, because if there's no build modules array, our module is not activated. And then we want to check for this array to contain our module path. Like this. So if this condition is true, this means our module is activated and we need to deactivate it. Or we can deactivate it, well, we just need to filter out our build modules array from our module path like this. And once this is done, we can just write back our user to the file system using the write user function from RC9, and we write back our current using inside Nuxt RC, like this. And well, of course, I need to import the right user function. Voila. And well, we're done. So now whenever our module is activated, this script will deactivate it. So we're off to writing the else statement. The else statement is if our module is deactivated, we want to activate it. In order to do that, we first need to check if there's a build modules array. If there's one, we take it. Otherwise, we create a new one. And once this is done, we can just push our module path inside our build modules array. And again, we will just write our build modules path inside our file system like this. Okay, so we're done. We'll clean up a bit the console log that we had, like this. And now, if I launch my CLI here, you can see that it edited my Nuxt file and added my build modules path that it found programmatically inside it. And as you might have guessed, if I try to launch again my Nuxt server, our module is showing. Hey, all right, awesome. So last thing we want to do is that we did that in order to ship our module. So let's ship our module together. So first off, I will just remove my path from the Nuxt because we'll ship it. And in order to ship it, we need to do two things. First thing, we need to tell Node that we need to tell that our package contains a CLI. In order to do that, we need to go to our package.json file and create a bin object inside it. So the bin object looks like this. And here, what we're telling is that we want to note that upon installation of this package, we want to create a module docs CLI, and this CLI will execute our bin CLI.js file. Great. So we can save that. Second thing we want to do, we want to go to our CLI.js at the top of it. We want to give a hint to Node for that this file will be executed inside Node context. This is required because otherwise our CLI will break in production, and that's not what we want. So we give it a hash bang like this, which is some kind of funky string that you might already have come across. And it's just a hint for Node that this file will need to be executed within Node. All right, so last thing we want to do is to actually just add some console logs to tell our users what is actually going on when they use our CLI. And with that, I think we're off to go, and we can just publish our library to npm. So let's give it a try. So we run npm publish inside my module docs. We wait for npm to run. And if that works, well, we'll have published. OK, that worked. So we have published something together live. So what we'll do now, we'll install this library together. So we'll put this here. So we install the module docs Nuxt Nation we just created together. And I hope it will work. All right, great. And now that it's installed, we should have access to a module docs CLI. So if I run that, great, it just told us that our module has been activated. Isn't that cool? And it just updated our Nuxt. And now if I run again, hold on. If I run again my Nuxt server, our module is back. Suspense, yeah, it's here. And well, obviously, if I try to run again my CLI, the module is gone. It's gone from the Nuxt. And well, it's just working now, great. All right, so we went through a lot. So let's reflect on what we learned together today. So first thing, we learned about Nuxt. So Nuxt is a file that lives in your home directory. It is used as a base to resolve every Nuxt config on your computer, and it is easily editable using the RCN package. And finally, Nuxt is the go-to way to register and configure global modules. Then we learned about Node CLIs. Node CLIs are basically Node.js scripts that are shipped using the bin config of our package.json, and a hash bang is necessary for CLI to execute correctly. So, well, in about 10 minutes, we turned a regular module into a global module. It is now available transparently across all our Nuxt projects on our computer, and we even had time to ship it to npm again. So you can give it a try yourself by running this command, which I will paste in a while on the chat. All right, so to conclude, let's just recap everything that we learned today about global modules. So first off, that global modules, they are about personalization. They have no impact on your code base nor the final website. They are built just like regular modules and are registered and configured globally through the Nuxt file. This allows them to work transparently across all our Nuxt projects, and a simple CLI makes for a great interface to enable, disable, and configure a global module. That was my talk, an introduction to Nuxt Global Module. You can find everything about these talks, so the sources, the slides, the repositories, the transcript even, at lucie.thread/Nuxt Nation. You can also check out my blog at lucie.thread, and you can follow me and my nonsense at lucie.thread/Twitter. Thanks, everyone.